Hello and welcome to another episode of Lore and Loot. Today I thought we'd do something a little different. You see, we've been covering the Fighters Guild questline so far, getting a closer look at some of the towns we visit, and a more in-depth look at the story behind the Fighters Guild. We've also looked at the history of the Fighters Guild and at the economy of Vardenfell. And that's all well and good, but we haven't really tackled any in-depth lore of the Elder Scrolls universe as a whole so far. So today I thought we'd actually take a dive into one of the more esoteric aspects of the Elder Scrolls lore, birth signs. Now, if you've only played Skyrim, you probably don't know what I'm talking about because that game retconned birth signs. Now, this isn't a video for bashing Skyrim, but basically, if Skyrim was your first game in the series, you may not know about birth signs. Now, think back to the beginning of the game, the opening little cutscene. Here we are told that a prisoner with uncertain parents, born under a certain sign, is being transported to Morrowind by the Emperor. This is subtle, and it appears early on in the game and isn't really mentioned again until much later. However, this is an important element in the overarching storyline of the game's main quest. If you recall, as soon as you get off the ship, you are asked a few census questions, including your race, your profession, and your birth sign. Your birth sign, in essence, is the constellation in the sky on the day you were born. Think of it very much like our zodiac, with certain months being represented by certain astrological signs. Now, I actually don't know anything about real life astrology, so I'm just going off of my very limited knowledge of this. But the concept is similar. Depending on which sign you choose, you get different abilities and even spells. See, I picked the Steed for my sign, right? Because it grants a boost to speed, and I like that. However, we never looked over the different perks and drawbacks for each sign, so we're going to take a look at these. However, there's a secondary aspect to the birth signs other than permanent stat boosts and spells. You see, birth signs also have a larger role to play in Tamrielic lore as a whole. When we first walk out of the main excise and census office, and we look at this shelf on the left here, we see a red book. This book is the Firmament, and it is the first lore book that the game presents us. Now, I'm not going to read the book word for word, that would be probably boring, but I will go over the main points of the book and also take a look at the respective in-game consequences for each birth sign. There are 13 constellations in the heavens. 3 of the constellations are known as the Guardians. These are the Warrior, the Mage, and the Thief. According to tradition, each of these 3 has 3 minor constellations which they guard or look over against the 13th constellation, the Serpent. The calendar in the Elder Scrolls is divided into 12 months, much like our world. It just so happens that each month corresponds to one of the 12 constellations, but you'll notice the Serpent has no month. According to the book, the Serpent has no month, for it moves about in the heavens, usually threatening one of the other constellations. The way the months are determined and the way that a person is assigned a birth sign is dependent on the sun. When the sun rises near one of the constellations, it is that constellation's season. Now, the word season can be interchanged with month, and each season has roughly 30 days. In Arena and Daggerfall, each season lasted exactly 30 days. But starting in Morrowind, these were changed to reflect the days that our own Gregorian calendar has, which is a bit silly in my opinion. Nevertheless, each birth sign oversees a season, and as we've mentioned, the 3 main constellations guard their 3 lesser constellations from the Serpent. We'll go over these now with more detail. The first sign is the Warrior. The Warrior's season is Last Seed, because his strength is needed for the harvest. He oversees the Lady, the Steed, and the Lord. According to the book, people born under this sign are more proficient with weapons of all kinds, but tend to have short tempers. In Morrowind, you gain the ability Wayward, which grants you a permanent fortify attack of 10 points. Next up is the Mage. His season is Rain's Hand, when magicka was first used by mortals. His charges are the Apprentice, the Golem, and the Ritual. In-game, this sign grants the Fey ability, which grants a permanent fortify maximum magicka ability of 0.5 times your intelligence attribute total. Those born under the Mage have more magicka and talent for all kinds of spellcasting, but tend to be arrogant and absent-minded. Finally, of the 3 Guardian signs is the Thief. The Thief's season is Evening Star, the darkest month of the year. Her charges are the Lover, the Shadow, and the Tower. According to the book, those born under the Thief are not necessarily all thieves. However, they tend to take more risks, yet they come to less harm. This can be seen through their ability called Akaviri Danger Sense, which grants them a permanent sanctuary effect of 10. Now, if you're not familiar with the sanctuary spell, it causes the target to be harder to hit with physical attacks, which, to put another way, essentially boosts your dodge chance. So having a 10 sanctuary adds a plus 10 to your dodge chance of any physical attack. Not a bad little spell. Next up, we're going to talk about the Serpent. As mentioned earlier, the Serpent does not actually have a season of its own, as it wanders the night sky looking to harass other constellations. According to the Firmament, those born under this sign are both the most blessed and the most cursed. Instead of a permanent ability in-game, choosing the Serpent as your sign grants you a spell, Star Curse. This spell allows you to inflict poison on your enemy for 3 points for 30 seconds on touch, but at the cost of 1 point of damage to your health for 30 seconds as well, bringing together the idea of being the most blessed and the most cursed. Next, we can talk about the charges. These are the lesser constellations, if you will, those protected by the guardians we spoke of earlier. First up is the Lady. Her season is Hearthfire. Those born under this sign have 2 abilities, Lady's Favor and Lady's Grace, which grant a plus 25 to personality and endurance, respectively. Next up is the Steed. Her season is Midyear. It is said that those born under this sign are impatient and are always in a rush, which can be seen by the plus 25 permanent Fortify Speed ability, Charioteer. Finally, of the Warrior's charges is the Lord. His season is First Seed, for he oversees all of Tamriel during the planting season. Those who are born under this sign are stronger and healthier than others. This is the first sign so far that grants both a spell and an ability. The spell is Blood of the North, which restores health for 2 points for 30 seconds on self. However, this ability is a negative one. Trollkin grants a permanent 100% weakness to fire. Essentially, this doubles the damage you would take from a fire spell. For example, if a spell would do a flat 10 points of damage to someone normal, without weaknesses or resistance to fire, someone with Trollkin would receive 20 points of damage. Next up, we have the 3 signs that fall under the Mage. The first is the Apprentice, whose season is Sun's Height. Those born under this sign have an affinity to magic, but are more susceptible to magical damage in exchange. Their ability is Elfborn, which grants a Fortify maximum magicka effect of 1.5 times your intelligence attribute, but a 50% weakness to magicka of all kinds. The Atronach, sometimes called the Golem, is next. Its season is Sun's Dusk, and those born under this sign are natural sorcerers with deep natural reserves of magicka. However, they are unable to regenerate magicka on their own. This is reflected in their ability, Wombburn. Wombburn grants spell absorption of 50% and Fortify maximum magicka by a whopping 2 times your intelligence. But the cost is steep. You cannot regenerate your own magicka when you rest. You see, in Morrowind, none of your stats other than fatigue actually regenerate on their own. You can cast a spell, drink a potion, or rest to regenerate either health or magicka. But those with stunted magicka, which is what the Atronach has, cannot regenerate while resting. You can of course still drink potions and use other spells to regenerate your magicka, but resting is not an option anymore. Now, of course, being attacked with a magic effect will regenerate your magicka as well if you have this sign. Finally, we have the Ritual. The Ritual season is Morning Star. Those born under the sign have 2 spells, Blessed Word, which turns undead 100 points for 30 seconds on target, as well as Blessed Touch, which turns undead 100 points for 30 seconds on touch. They also have the first power that we've seen so far. A power is a very powerful spell that you can only cast once every 24 hours. The ritual grants Mara's Gift, which restores health 100 points on self. A very handy spell. We now head into the Thieves Charges. We start off with the Lover, whose season is Sun's Star. It is said that those born under the Lover are graceful and passionate, which is reflected in the ability Mooncalf, which grants a plus 25 to agility. The Lover also grants a power, Lover's Kiss, which will paralyze the target for 60 seconds, but will damage your fatigue for 200 points. It's kind of a last resort type of spell. Next is the Shadow. The Shadow season is Second Seed, and those born under this sign can use the power Moon Shadow, which grants them invisibility for 60 seconds. Invisibility is a very nifty spell, but if used improperly, can get you in a lot of trouble. Invisibility in Morrowind makes you 100% invisible. However, if you do anything, attack, open a door, lockpick a lock, the effect immediately wears off. So this is more of an escape type of spell. For true invisibility that you can use while you do other things, you want Chameleon. Finally, the last of them all is the Tower. The Tower season is Frostfall. Those born under this sign have a knack for finding gold and opening locks of all kinds. The Tower grants the player the spell Beggar's Nose, which is a detect animal, key, and enchantment of 200 feet for 60 seconds. It also grants the power Tower Key, which allows the player to unlock any lock up to level 50 on touch once a day. And that's the lore of the birth signs and what they represent for the peoples of Tamriel. Now, in Arena and Daggerfall, there were also celebrations and festivals that coincided with the different seasons. For example, the 27th of Last Seed is known as Harvest's End, the day when people celebrated the fruits of the harvest. It was a day where access was encouraged before the cold winter months to come forced people to be more conservative with their food and drink. Some taverns would even offer free drinks all day long. Unfortunately, these were all taken out in subsequent games, so they don't appear in Morrowind and beyond. However, the birth signs continue to play an important role in the games, particularly when considering which powers, abilities, and spells you wanted your character to have, as well as having to balance any potential drawbacks from each birth sign. And, like we just talked about, birth signs and the seasons play an important cultural role in Tamriel as well. So now you know a little more about birth signs in the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. What birth sign is your favorite? Do you have a preferred one you always go to? Have you tried them all? As usual, I hope you're enjoying this series so far, and I hope you'll join me again for the next episode of Lore and Loot Morrowind. Until then,